I'm gonna call it a 2.
And you're out of 5.
Yeah, out of 5. I thought you were arguing with me. I was
You're
like, no,
out of 5.
No, 2.
No, I know what's best for you.
You feel great.
You feel awesome. Trust me.
Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie podcast, a podcast about not one, but 2 neurodivergent adults trying to live their lives on the Neuro D list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ronnie.
And I'm Zanny.
And this week, we are going to be talking about religion.
And with that, let's meter our Moxies.
I am all for it.
Great.
This week on a scale from 1 to 5 or 0 to 5. Do we do?
I'm a 0. I mean, you can pick a 1.
I don't think
pick
you're
a 0
at all.
What?
I don't think you're a 0 at all. That's.
I just feel like, how is the lowest register a 1? That's registering on a scale like that right. To me. You know, if you're at a negative or you're really, nothing is great, 0% of things are great, how can you automatically be a 1? That makes no sense to me. I'm not a mathematician though.
But like a battery. Like if you're at 1%, you still
got a
your
little
phone
juice.
Still works.
Yes.
Not for long.
Right.
But I get that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go 0 to 5.
Okay.
I'm going with the 2. Honestly, I feel good to be here, and that's pumping me up a little. I find that out every week. I like being here.
Yeah.
It helps. But earlier today, I was probably before we hit roll on everything, or before I walked in the door, it was probably a 1. I don't even know if it was anything in specific. Just sometimes you have those times when you feel like, I'm not going to talk for everybody. Sometimes I have those times where I feel like I am wrong about everything and I am the villain of my story, and but also the villain of everybody else's story. So just in one of those moods, and not completely out of nowhere, I did have a fuck up, and I did take responsibility for it and do the right thing and apologize to the person involved. I hate to be vague booking about it, but sometimes your stories are also other people's stories. Exactly. And, but yeah, so I did the right thing, and I feel good about having done the right thing, but I feel, that despair of having needed to do the right thing. Right.
That's a loop. I've been in a similar situation where, even though things are okay now, the replay of the fuck up just keeps going and going and going and going.
I know this is like maybe random. 5 years ago, I was talking to somebody at just like a booth at a little fair I was at. And this person was a trans woman. And when I left, I offhandedly said, without thinking, okay, thanks, man, and headed out. And I have literally never forgiven myself for that. And I don't think I ever will. But
things happen. That was 5 years ago.
But I know she hasn't forgiven me. I don't know that. She probably doesn't remember at all, hopefully. But how is your meter going? So like I say, it was bad, but I'm on my way up.
Yeah, I understand that. That takes however long it takes for your process.
Right.
Well, I like a decent 10-point scale unless it's real complicated. Which, I don't know. This week, overall, things are good. So I'm going to go with like an 8.75. No,
nice.
What? 8.25? Around there.
Yeah, you don't want half a point of discrepancy.
I don't. That would, to be wrong about my own self would be terrible.
At that point, why don't you just say, well, I'm feeling somewhere between a 2 and a 9.
Yeah, exactly. It feels dishonest if I were to say 8 to 8.75 is too large of a margin for me. That is what the problem is. It's an interesting week/month. March is a markedly rough one overall, and I don't always pick up on the patterns until it's too late. But a lot of big things have happened in March historically for me. A cool thing is that on Saturday, on March 16th, March 16th, 2020, the day that the United States shut down, was also the day I became cancer-free. So I got 4 years there. So that's nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm happy to be alive.
I'm happy you're
Probably
alive
wouldn't
too.
be dead yet if I didn't find it, but soon.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I'm alive, so that's cool.
You know, otherwise I could just ghost it up.
We'll see about that.
Well, no, we will. You will. A post-mortem, you will see about that. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a contemplative week. You know, following up, you know, with the realizing that I am asexual. I'm an ace arrow. And telling people about it, you know, not like shoving it in, you know, unsolicited. We're talking about candy and then I'm talking about that. Like, no, but things come up relatively often.
Yeah.
And I choose to take those moments to, I don't know, I guess it's coming out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or say it
I couldn't
out loud.
I couldn't think of a better term for it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's been fine. A couple instances of like, what, like laughing, you know, like, and I'm not offended, you know, because for one, I'm 40 and my self-esteem is intact now, finally, after that took about 38 years.
You know what though? Self-esteem's a tough one. That's not a bad, like we both laughed at it, but that's not a bad time to get it intact.
Right. I mean, you know, the stars aligned at that point. At 32 years ago-ish, maybe one. Maybe 38 was a lot. Anyway, not a necessary rabbit hole. But, you know, I can understand why, but it's also just like, that's maybe a fraction of what it's like for, you know, people where the reactions could be more severe instead of just like, oh, that's real. Or like, ha, oh, you are. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
And then it doesn't register, you know? It just seems like you can see it on a person's face. Like what you're telling me is impossible is what it looks like, you know.
Thank you for sharing with me that you're broken.
Right. And so it's just interesting to watch that reaction. Which, you know, this was one person they're not my people, right? Like friend of a friend.
Gotcha.
You know, that was in a vicinity. Yes. Not trying to be besties there. So it's, you know, think what you want.
Someone who probably doesn't listen to the podcast. Or hopefully doesn't.
I didn't even think about that shit. Probably won't. It was just an interesting reaction. And it you know, like I took it for what it was in the moment. You know, I wasn't going to grandstand on it, you know, or anything. You know, people are entitled to their own opinions too. But it was just like, okay, well, there's that heteronormity. Or whatever. Yeah. If that's the word for you. Which until about a week and a half ago, I hadn't thought about in terms of an orientation or sexuality at all. You know, I hadn't thought about it at all.
Right.
But I don't know if I would have reacted that way. But, you know, it takes people off guard, I guess you could say. But everyone's been very supportive, that's good. That I've said. And, you know, I don't really feel the need to defend it. If you don't understand it, that's okay. I'm not going to waste my time telling you.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if it's such a hard thing for you to understand, like maybe down the line you'll understand or think about it or something, but it's not my job to force it in your face, you know, but I'm not going to back down either.
Right.
And that's okay. And I'm okay to let that go.
Well, and even it's the what do you call it? You can control being open about this new thing that you've discovered about yourself. You can't control what how they react to it, you know? Right.
And I expect, you know, people to be like, what? You know? But I mean, that's the point of talking about it for me. Like, it would be very easy to hide that, you know? Yeah. I just choose not to. I didn't choose that way about a lot of things. So I think it's important for me to talk about it. I don't know that I'm go to every, you know, parade type person. I don't like parades. I don't like crowds. I don't like anything about all of that, you know? Right. So that probably won't be me. But, I do what I can.
Well, there's other stuff besides parades out there.
Yes. There's many things. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so it's like and not that I feel underwater. This is not the only thing. Like, I just have a lot of things going on. Like, I have 4 big things happening, like side project-y things. Okay. And so just like needing a little bit of focus. Plus, I'm kind of feeling under the weather a bit. Like, I can feel a cold coming on. Might sound strange to you or every listener. I don't know, but this is just how it's always been. Believe me or not, don't care. I can feel when I'm getting sick. I took a COVID test, just a disclaimer, because I know that's a thing, even though it's not a thing according to the government. I did it because I have them negative. But I can feel when my... saying it out loud... I say it and people just look at me like, oh, okay, pat your head. Okay, sweetheart. Oh, fuck. But I can feel my blood working harder. I don't know how else to say it. I have extra sensitivity. It might be a sensory thing, to be honest. But I know I can notice those types of tiny changes, This is separate from feeling sore. This is definitely a cold coming on. I feel it in my throat a little bit, just a tiny bit, but I know it's coming. I have anyway. But like when I say the blood thing, people just are like, okay, and there's no way to prove it. Yeah, I just know it. True. I mean, I know something's different, and that's what I attribute to it. Oh, my T cells are working real hard. Good job, y'all. Way to go, T's. I don't know. Whatever. Think what you want, but I know that's coming. So like that is kind of
you're stressing out in anticipation of the cold to come.
Not stressing out, just like trying to push off until I go home because I can work from home tomorrow. Nice. So just trying to stave it off a little bit, but it is affecting like focus. Probably in a good way for this, to be honest. Because the brain is a little muted.
Oh, it's a little muted?
Yeah. Like I did take an afternoonie. This is how I knew I was sick yesterday too, because I took the afternoonie. I was exhausted because this was coming on, and then that changed nothing. Which is not normal for me. I just still felt tired. Like more anyway. That's all.
I will say I've been having the battles with the sleepiness recently. I think it just my schedule got off at one point.
Oh, and we had that time change.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But I think more just like because the time change probably, but yeah, my schedule got off, and then I have a bad habit. I call it letting my IE hang out of Monster Energy drinks, which I shouldn't be drinking. I don't even do them for the energy. I just like the way they taste. And they're way too sugary for me to be drinking. And I will, if I go to like Target or something, I will reward myself with a Monster Energy drink and a thing of peanut M&Ms. And I think that caught up with me energy-wise, just through my cycles for a loop. So I'm still getting back into them and getting over the shame of having Monster Energy cans and peanut M&M wrappers along the bottom of my minivan.
Okay, so updates.
Yes, I did have a small update. In case this is your first episode, I have been in the process of getting evaluated for ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and that evaluation has come to an end. And the official verdict is a negative on the autism, but what I have is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with subclinical autistic traits and anxiety. And I know, like, and we talked about on the show of just kind of where my head was at and some of those things, and looking into second opinions and stuff like that. And I think I think just to give our fine listeners an update, like the headspace I'm in now is that there is enough there. Like ADHD with subclinical autistic traits and anxiety. I mean, 2 out of 3 of those was already well confirmed. I don't know. It feels like if that's not it, then there is at least enough there for me to stretch my legs out for a while. Like this, if this feels like it could be a rest stop on the way, or this could be the stop, but I don't know until I kind of hang out with it for a while. And so that's kind of where I'm going to be for a bit of accepting the ADHD with subclinical autistic traits and anxiety, and starting to frame some of the things in my life around that, and using that and see how effective it is. And if it turns out to be ineffective and it just isn't fitting for me, then I think, then I can start burning through some of those resources and stuff like that. But for right now, I feel it's a good place to explore for a bit.
Okay.
And so that's my update.
Okay. Thanks for the update.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Kaiser is hard in a lot of ways, with stuff like this. I don't want to shit all over things, and I don't want to discourage, and I don't want to, you're in a good place, all of that stuff.
No, and I appreciate that.
Are you interested in my opinion of that subclinical word /
Sure.
It's a bunch of bullshit.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. That's not a subclinical levels of autistic traits or whatever they said. Like, that's not diagnosed, but whatever. At least they put something.
Right.
Which is big for Kaiser. But also, I just don't agree.
Okay.
Myself with, anxiety. Yeah, sure. Lots.
Well, the anxiety bit is like that had been
already
diagnosed pre. I used to. The blue pill that's not as fun as the other blue pill.
Viagra?
No, not that's the fun blue pill.
It's
the Zoloft.
I don't know.
Yeah, I used to take antidepressants. I do not anymore though.
For anxiety, or do you not want to disclose?
For anxiety and depression.
Okay.
It hit me really, like, it was always kind of there. It hit me really hard when the pandemic started, or as we got into the pandemic.
Yeah.
And yeah, but since then, the side effects of it were doing more harm than as bad as it had actually gotten. Which at its worst, it was well worth the side effects.
Sure. Well, speaking of the pandemic, did you find religion there?
I did, because nothing brings you to God more than the mass death of human, the mass exodus of human life from this existence.
Some might say that's actually true for them. So that was my awkward segue into our topic of the week.
Awkward how?
No, everything else I do. I thought it would be important to define like the 4 major types of this thing, right? So atheism, agnosticism. Did I say that right? Agnosticism, spirituality, and religion. Because those are 4 different constructs around the same kind of like, in the same umbrella of like belief system.
Okay. Yeah.
You want to say. And you can correct me if I'm wrong or don't encapsulate whatever it is that, you subscribe to, whatever.
All right.
Okay. So there's a bunch of definitions that vary slightly. I went with probably the most current. There were some I read. It was really hard. Philosophy is not my favorite thing.
Okay.
Because to me, every time I read through it, I'm just like, I'm just more fucked up by reading this than not having read it. Because it's like, if we change this one word, then it means this whole. I'm just like, you know what? This is just too much for me. Like you're being super abstract about things that are already abstract.
Mm-hmm.
This is very difficult to track, and that's kind of what happened with atheism and agnosticism. But then I was like, you know what? I don't have to get these from this website. I can go somewhere else. And that's what I did. So, okay. So atheism, short version, absence of belief in deities or God.
Mm-hmm.
Agnosticism.
Pretty good one.
Okay. Agnosticism, claim either, there's that CL again. All right. Claim either that it is not possible to have absolute or certain knowledge of God or gods. Oh, wrong emphasis. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Or alternatively, that while individual certainty may be possible, they personally have no knowledge of a supreme being.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is something people argue over the technicalities of it. I think in a lot of general stances, people say agnosticism is, maybe or maybe not. I don't know if there's a God or not. The best kind of definition I've heard of it, though, is agnosticism is asking whether or not it can be known if there is a God.
Right.
And so
like for certain versus belief.
Yeah. So like you could have, and like a lot of people, I mean, like you could definitely identify me, or I could identify myself as an agnostic atheist. You can't actually answer for 100% if there's a God or not. But given all the information we have, I'm siding on not. And I guess it might be harder, but I guess you could, or no, I guess it'd probably be a lot of agnostic Christians or agnostic believers in anything. Of like, I don't know if you can ever, it can't really be answered, but I'm putting my money on that there is. And so I think where agnosticism has kind of gotten the rap of being maybe not, I think it is just an acknowledgement of the unknowable.
It's like a rational, because belief is something completely different than an organized anything. You're choosing, and you can convince yourself that way. I believe, if you really believe that turmeric will cure your cold, let's say, could be real, could be placebo effect, doesn't matter, because you feel better.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that was the wrong analogy. Okay, spirituality, a broad set of principles that transcend all religions or just religion in general. About the relationship between ourselves and something larger or something else. And then religion, I had 2 bullet points because I couldn't choose. Okay, so outward practice of a spiritual system of beliefs, values, codes of conduct, and rituals, or a set of beliefs, practices, and language that characterizes a community that is searching for transcendent meaning in a particular way, generally based upon belief in a deity. I
like that second bullet point definition. Because one of the ones that's come out in fairly recent history. I don't know, are you familiar with the Satanic Temple at all?
No.
Okay, so the Satanic Temple is this group that a lot of people think is like a political movement or like an artistic thing, and it's not. They are a group of people that don't believe in a deity. When they say Satan, it's more in the like John Milton Paradise Lost sense. But they have built a religion, and it has now become recognized by the government. So it is, tax-free. It is imbued with all of the rights, or they fight to have all of the rights that other religions have. And I believe completely non-cynically, their thing is that that religion, a group of people sharing a camaraderie, sharing some of the things you listed on that sheet, that belief in the supernatural isn't a necessity to be religion. And I got to admit, it took me a while to get on board, but I'm kind of with them in that particular viewing of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that one acknowledges that it's mostly a belief in something supernatural, but at least now we're starting to see things outside of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, we are based in the United States, where Christianity is the key, the key to the kingdom.
No, it's very.
It was founded within Christianity, you could say, at the beginning.
Okay.
You wouldn't say that, it seems.
I would say there's an argument against that. Not one that I think I would be great for making right now.
Okay. The thing to me when I think about why people left England to colonize the United States, so I'm not talking about, the native people who should have just been here this whole time. We should have stayed the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what happened in the 17 whatevers. So my understanding is that the Puritan people came over here to practice religion as they saw fit somehow, and I don't remember what the big, religious clash was at the time. Right. And then, the church was not separate from state when things forged. That is what my understanding is.
Yeah, well, and I believe, I have to double check this, but I believe in England they still, the church is part of the state, which is what we came from. And I think that's one of the reasons I get a little, it's undeniable that that a large portion of the people who found this country were religious, and that that religion has kind of surged through this country in a lot of ways, and that we are obviously a majority Christian country. But I just take a little issue with the thing, just because we did set up things like separation of church and state. And I know we didn't call it that back then. But I think we definitely had a lot of, obviously more in our forefathers than the Pilgrims per se.
You have forefathers?
Yeah. Don't be judgmental.
I'm just
not.
Just surprised.
Mm.
I mean, just a little humor. This is make it a Ronnie joke. I just stick with my own, I guess.
Good joke.
I mean, thanks for the patronizing me.
I never know the difference between patronizing and patronizing.
I think it's just the way people say shit.
Okay.
I don't think that's a difference.
No, I mean, I don't know the difference between I'm going to buy. I don't know which word is I'm going to buy something from you and I'm looking down on you.
Oh, well,
between
my brain can't compute. No, not today. I don't know either. Didn't even think about buying shit. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's no way that society got to where it was, where everyone was an actual practicing Christian, but I think religion was forced on everybody for a really long time. Then you had to subscribe in some way, and use it for nefarious means if you needed to, and a lot of people needed to. People in politics always need to, in my opinion. But Christianity is still people. I mean, there are many definitions of that. Okay, not everyone is a practicing Christian. Not everyone is a Christian, but the majority rule is most people in the United States are in some form, whatever that looks like. Who knows?
And I would say through probably a lot of the Western world, whatever Western world.
Yeah, and that includes Catholicism too. This is the broad Jesus thing.
I would say U.S. might be the outlier as far as most other countries would be.
We have a lot of both.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of both. I think I think we're one of the few where, the big Protestantism, as in not Catholicism, where if you say the church in other countries, they mean the Catholic Church. That generally doesn't seem to be the case in America. I mean, lots of Catholics still, but by the numbers,
Here we
not
just
nearly
got the
as
mega
much.
churches.
What's that?
Here we just got the mega churches. If you just go home, or you're probably already home if you're listening to this, or you're somewhere, just watch The Righteous Gemstones and you'll learn all about mega churches. Bubble burst. Don't think that that's fake. Okay. Danny McBride, I was pleasantly surprised that he actually wrote that, because like sometimes his humor I'm just like eye roll for me, but that entire series is really good. And I guess he was raised in a southern situation where in a big church like that, and I 100% believe all of that stuff. Like it's just a bunch of undiagnosed people running around, running shit, getting people to send tons of money and stuff, and maybe someone has some good there, I don't know, but like it's a shit show behind doors. Like they often go bankrupt, tons of corruption, all that stuff happens. Often. It's impossible in a big situation. It's impossible.
Well, and two, like it is you are dealing with the kind of power over people in those situations that I would assume it would be, I don't want to give people an out on that, but it'd be very difficult not to take advantage of. Very wrong, very mean, very not humane, but it seems a very easy thing to slip down. Like that you're going to find that like you put yourself into this power position where people want to be controlled to some extent. And I'm trying to choose my words as carefully as possible, but because I said, like, I don't particularly like the idea of diminishing people.
But I mean, the other side of that is, so one of the areas that I looked at, undiagnosed neurodiverse people. There is a lot of draw to high control groups.
Yeah.
For several reasons. And it's mostly because, without medication, without treatment, without knowledge about how your brain works, when someone else is making those decisions for you, it is really easy to live your life to a certain extent, So in this thing that I read, people who are undiagnosed are at a higher risk to be in a high control group because, for one, many of us have a history of not being able to make friends easily. And then you're basically love bombed, in high control groups, cults or like super fundamentalist groups.
I was about to ask what exactly high control meant. Right. But yes. No,
yeah. So not like if you go to a mega church, like no one is going to be like, are you coming back next week? You're coming to this, you're coming to this, you're coming to this. It's like, come back. We love you. Bye. Right. But it's not like following you home.
Right.
Like that, that is one benefit of going to a big church. Like you could easily disappear there, which some people, that's maybe the draw. I don't know.
Right.
So that's one thing. Another, people, I don't know about you, but when I read this, I was like, oh yeah, I did that too. Like undiagnosed neuro D people, like we look at others and kind of compare ourselves and learn how to act. So like what are the rules of this situation, and rules and structure and things are very evident in high control groups. So the examples they gave were, okay, how to dress, how to act around the opposite gender, how to act toward authority, how to spend your spare time, how to be of service to the world. Like there's something you could do with every minute. Right.
Well, and two, I was going to say, and this isn't exactly the same, but I'm just kind of hopping off that idea, is like we've talked about how important or how useful a schedule can be for us, especially on ADHD, and or I say especially because that's what we both have, and like I haven't spent whole lots of time in churches, but the time I have spent, it is very structured. And it's, maybe I've spent more time in Catholic churches than other churches, but that I know is a very routine.
I mean, they all are
now. Yeah. And probably different stuff between them, but that routine is,
you can rely on it.
It's comforting.
Even at most Christian churches, even probably the small ones, you get there, someone says something, and then you start singing, and then these announcements happen, and they tithe, then you might sing one more time, and then the sermon, and then bye. You could set your watch to those things in almost every setting, which there is comfort in that, for people, to know what's coming, and then the types of songs and things, where, hitting those notes that elicit, emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
Get your heart ready to receive. Yeah. If you all can't tell, I think you probably can. We were both raised in church. Probably me much more involved heavily. We'll get there.
Yeah.
And then the other way, did I just cut you off?
No.
Okay.
No, I agreed with what you said.
Great. That's what I like to hear. I am a high control individual. And then weeding motivation to do almost anything, most people do, but it's more pronounced when you're talking ADHD, and certainly much more pronounced when you're talking ASD, so everything is scheduled for you, in a high control group, structure, gatherings, events, studies, expectations, know exactly what's expected of you, even if it doesn't feel good, so those are the draws, and those are why some people might get kind of sucked in there. There's these people that want to be my friend. I have a hard time making friends or whatever. I know what to do, I know what's expected, this is predictable, even if I kind of hate it.
Well, and I was gonna say, and that's because I didn't grow up going to church a lot. Yeah, when I say I spent time in Catholic church, it's because I was dating a Catholic girl. Is what it is. And but I could definitely see the appeal of having built-in friend group. It was something I struggled with having growing up. And growing up, I was never my parents are each religious, but one's a Southern Baptist, one's a Catholic. So we never.
An odd pair.
Yeah, right. It is.
It just is.
It is what it is. No, it's my mom and my mom's family. She's first generation, but came from Mexico, and so Catholicism very heavy over there. And my dad and his family moved to California from Missouri, so that's how it happened. So they never really found a church for them, and also neither of them were really big church people. I say were, they're both still alive. I guess it was in the past tense. Both of them were never really big church people, and they never really found a church that felt right for the family. And like my mom always says, that religion is always more personal for her. And so we grew up with religion. My parents taught me to pray before meals and before going to bed at night, did all that, but it's just never a church person per se. But I could definitely see, but I was also, I don't have personal experience with going to church and having an automatic friend group.
Those are not mutually exclusive. This is more of a fundamentalist / cult type situation. There's just a higher susceptibility for undiagnosed neuro-Ds there.
Right.
In mainstream churches, I grew up going to church and was constantly, I had friends, but I never had a trouble making friends.
You mean within the church or just in general?
In general. Church or not church. But it's not an automatic friend group for just going to a regular church. And it's also not if you go to a mega church, you're not necessarily just going to have friends.
Well, you've convinced me. I'm no longer going.
Great. If that was the deciding factor. there are definitely in-group, out-group situations in there too. And it's just like everything else, you know, right. There's popular people, there's the weird people, there's, you know, but there is maybe more of a tolerance, but sort of, I don't know. It just depends on how involved you get. Right. I've spent a lot of time in churches, even when I was married. And for a long time I did hold on to that belief system. And just
now, what belief system, if you don't mind me asking? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sect wise, non-denominational, I guess.
Okay.
I did rebel in my teens and go to a Pentecostal church.
Ooh.
That is, Foursquare, which is like a step below that. So not quite handling snakes, but close. I faked a lot of stuff, like, so this is when I was a teenager. So, I'm just thinking back. So at this church, like people would, you know, do the literal laying on of hands to pray for someone. And most people fall down. So I knew, okay, when people do that to me, I just have to fall down and they put a prayer blanket on me or something.
Yeah.
Which I never was like, oh God is throwing me on the floor. Like that wasn't my experience. I faked speaking in tongues a lot. Yeah. Because everyone else was doing it.
But like, and I don't know if they have these anymore, but did you ever go to the old, like when, like at a county fair and they would have like a hypnotist show?
I've been to those, and maybe not the fair, but
yeah. But like, it's kind of the same thing happening. That's, you know,
potentially, yeah.
You know, you just kind of get in the spirit of it. Of like, it might not even be that you're intentionally faking, but like at one point, you know, you're on a stage with a bunch of other people and a bunch of people looking at you, and then someone starts doing this, and then you do the thing that's expected of you.
There is kind of like a shared experience energy there too, where, you know, you might have started out faking it, but then you just get really into it. Yeah. And I know that can't be me. Like, I don't even know at this point if it's just because I am just super inhibited, you know, like everyone's like, oh, lower your inhibitions, you know, like, but it's just so ingrained. Like, I don't know that hypnosis would work on me, but I think that is maybe more of maybe I am on the autism spectrum thing versus that, because I just can't put myself there. I can't let go fully or whatever in anything. Yeah. And I've always thought that was just like a defect. Like, oh, I just must not be in love or whatever.
Right.
Because I'm just not feeling that love or how people describe it. You know, so other things fall into that category a little bit too. Not that, you know, asexuality and aromanticism is strictly for people with autism. No, it's just there's a higher instance there, but still not the majority.
Yeah, well, and too, I think with most forms of queerness, there's a heavier overlap with neurodiversity. And this is purely conjecture, so I'll throw out that too. But it's a conjecture that other people have conjectured as well, that it may have something to do with what some people might call not understanding social norms, but like are not loving of social norms, and so thinking or I guess being outside of those social norms, and that when you get to ideas like gender and it being a socially constructed construct, our minds might be more wired to be like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense, you know, but yeah, we do see that overlap from time to time, and again, not 100%, but yeah,
right. Higher instances of things like that. And for me, like, even this is not even really on topic, but an example is, you know, if I'm at a concert, unless I am drunk, I'm not really moving to the music. I don't feel. I understand that people love to dance and it makes them feel free. It does not make me feel that way at all. Sober, drunk, really. But if I'm drunk, I just don't care.
Right.
And I don't love being drunk anymore. But I don't know. Like, why do I have to dance? Like, fuck you. I'm not dancing ever again. Like, I don't know. There's that little line too.
I cannot imagine
me dancing.
No. No, I can't imagine dancing in front of people. That seems, I don't know what it is. There's nothing comforting about that feeling to me.
Right. But I mean, it's spun as like when you really feel free, you could dance like nobody's watching. Okay. Like, okay, maybe, but could it be a different action? Like, why does it have to be dancing?
Right.
Like, I don't feel the music in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I listen to music and it's hitting me, like I feel it vibrationally, kind of like literally if I am in a place where it can be loud, like here in my chest, like that's where it processes for me. Why does it have to be dancing? Like, why is that the thing? But whatever, this is not even about religion. But there is dancing in religion.
No, well, and that's and two, I think that's kind of the idea of transcendence. I think like some people equate like religion as the only transcendent thing. But there is stuff that you feel in your chest. There's stuff that you feel, maybe us not so compelled to dance to. But I'll say I have a weird thing where, like concerts, I have a really hard time with going to any concert that has seats in it. I do not know what to do in that situation. Standing room only concerts, I got that all day long. I've even been known to hop in a pit or two, which is very outside of my
repertoire.
The things I would do socially. Pressing my body up against strangers on purpose.
Puke.
Is, and partially because I'm more worried about the strangers. But I don't know. It's music, and especially the kind of music that would get me to hop into a pit at 40 years old, which, by the way, does not last for long. This is not a whole concert thing.
Well, I feel like, side note, the music that we like is aging with us. And the fans are also same age. So pits are not these. I don't know.
Sorry, I was gonna say actually the last concert I went to, there were a bunch of old heads, but apparently they still got new fans, and so those kids had to pull me out of the pit when I fell down. Maybe more than once.
But at least they did that.
Yeah.
They didn't trample you.
No, they would never.
You didn't have your Mufasa moment.
That's literally playing in my head right now.
Don't cry.
But I think I would sooner call it like a vibe than something supernatural. But there is something transcendent about being alive. There are definitely things that move you, that create this kind of figurative magic within you, and sometimes out in the world itself.
Yeah. I mean, I went to church a lot, and I never once was like, really I may have said let's go to church in some way. I personally, through Christianity throughout the years, have never felt free or not uninhibited is not the right word. Never felt free. I always felt like I just didn't measure up, which, there's provision for that, like, we all fall short of the glory of God,
right?
And okay, but like, this doesn't put, like, some people might be able to extract peace and serenity through church. Not me, ever. And there's some stuff that right now I don't really want to go into, as far as like how that kind of got out of control when I got married. But there was some stuff with that. There. And it's not that I'm anti talking about it. It's just like that is just like a whole other thing. And it's things that I've worked through, but it also, talking about them now is just not the time. We're just talking about religion in general. But all of this to say, I kind of, once I had the keys to my life back and started using them and steering my own shit, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go to church. I'll wait and see if I ever feel like it.
Right.
And then, I've been invited a few times and I just say no. And no is an answer and no is a sentence. Right? And I have to practice that because sometimes I feel like I need to say, no, not today because and then feel compelled to like offer another date where this is not something I want to do.
Right.
If you want to go, that is great for you. If you get something great out of it, happy for you. I need to have my own relationship with whatever this is. And so over the years and then learning about, my own self, my own ADHD-ness, I'm like, oh, this is why everyone was so annoyed with me all the time. Not my friends, but like in any sort of circumstance, like asking questions, I got told that if I didn't stop asking questions, they would go send me to sit with my parents in the boring big church or whatever, just like often, because like, why can't you just answer my questions though? Like I'm not, I know that I come off strong. Another case in the point of maybe possibly autism, but this has always been a thing for me. But like, if you can't come up with that answer, why am I the one in trouble? Like, I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong about this. I'm asking why or what or whatever. I don't know. Why, if you can't answer those questions, then why are you in leadership?
Outside of religion, I very much have that problem too. Of like, I have a general curiosity and I want to understand, but I don't know how to phrase this question so that another human being will not take it as one of their precious nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Precious reading between the lines thing. These are the lines, by the way, in case.
Here's the lines for you between these.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I found that works for me is I'll just say it up front. Like, I am not trying to come off as if I'm contradicting you. I just want to know, and then ask that question.
Yeah.
Or if I've already asked it, because that happens too. I don't think about it sometimes, and then I see someone's behavior change in front of my eyes. I'll say that, like, hey, I hope you don't feel some kind of way. I don't know, whatever the situation is, but it's you're talking to me differently now, and help me understand, something like that. Right. I say those things out loud now because I just don't have time to fucking guess. Yes. And if you're not going to tell me, but I see this is happening, it's probably because there's some social rule about that I don't care about and never have time for. Yeah. And also I want to know, like, my intention is always good. I'm not trying to make people feel bad about themselves. And so if that happens, I would like to know, not because I'm responsible for other people's feelings, but like, I know that sometimes I come off real strong and not always well received, which, for the most part, people like that about me. But if you don't know me, especially, it can be really weird.
That it might take a little getting to know you before they like it about you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that.
But that doesn't come off well in church. And like, so in some of the studies, evangelicals full on don't think, I mean, okay, not everybody, but like the consensus is, you should be able to take care of this at home. And ADHD isn't actually a real thing. You just need to parent better or something. And you should definitely not medicate this child. You should be able to handle this at home. Like, basically, we keep our doors closed. Like, this isn't real. This is some other thing. There's probably a fucking demon or something, in your child. Those kinds of lines.
Let's not jump to extremities, or let's not jump to extremes like ADHD. Have we considered demon?
Right. I mean, all mental illness is a demon in the old days. Yep. Maybe not even so old. I don't know. I mean, I believe that there's some stuff.
What is the stuff and any other things that come along with it? Well, and I think too that is it's not necessarily the same ghosts and religion, or ghosts and God. But one does, or I guess if you're religious, you kind of have to believe in the ghosts. Or I guess just one.
The Holy One.
Yeah.
In one religion.
Or I guess that but you zoom out, it does, and I think I can say this without too much controversy. Supernatural, that God would be considered supernatural and ghosts are considered
normal
supernatural. I'm going to start referring to stuff as normal natural.
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself in the more spiritual realm. I do think that I have a soul, and that soul doesn't die with my body. I do think that my body, my brain, and my soul are separate.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I've seen some of the more staunch, famous for being atheists say that, when we're talking, just because you brought up soul leaving the body, when we're talking about an afterlife, the sad truth of the matter is that we are, from a scientific point of view, we are still drastically behind in understanding what human consciousness is. I mean, most of them then were just like, well, if you take an educated guess, it's probably nothing after you die. But we're not.
Well, educated as far as what? Because like science and all of these things, I'm not trying to like poke holes in everything. It's just like all of these things are like man-made things. But what if it wasn't? Okay, I shouldn't even say man-made. I should say human devices, based on limited knowledge, which we can know a lot of things this way. But I don't think it works all the time.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things and that's the point of admission, of like, we don't know a lot about consciousness, but we do know about, or every single piece of evidence we've seen so far seems to be that it's occurring in our brain. We know that brain death is the most, that's where your personality leaves. That's where,
well, is it though?
Working. We've seen people that have had head injuries, and we've seen their
habits, and
their personalities change.
Yeah.
We understand things like, sadly, like lobotomies. We understand, which by the way is very basic and not nearly as far as some of the really in-depth understandings we have of other things. But any evidence that we have of where a personality or, a consciousness might come from, so far has been the brain.
Yeah.
Which isn't an absolute proof to like you were saying. And I think like they were admitting, but it's just where what we do have is pointing so far.
Right. Well, I mean, I can see why it would point there, because the brain is the thing that controls all the other systems anyway. So, that is where literal thoughts and all of those things come from. But in something, I don't know that there will ever be an answer to where does consciousness come from, because like the brain is very, very, very complex, and not that other systems aren't, but it's in control of so many different things.
Right.
And then when you add that layer on top of it, I don't know that there's a way to extract that, isolate it, test it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I mean, even before we get to where does consciousness come from, we don't even have a strong grasp on what consciousness is,
Like, I feel like on the opposite spectrum, like, I can't myself be an atheist because...
I believe in you.
Great.
You'll get there.
In front of you.
I have proof.
You have proof of me.
Video evidence. You see it.
Like, I just think the complete opposite way. I think it's just like a thought pattern thing, really. Because since we can't prove it, you're under the... since we can't prove it, I don't believe it. And for me, I'm just like, we can't disprove it either, so therefore I'm just at least a question mark.
But if I may, and this is one of those questions.
Not. Just kidding. Do it.
This is one of those questions I think is hard for me to ask without sounding condescending.
Sound condescending. I won't take it that way.
But isn't it also arguable, that argument for God, that we can't disprove him, I think also works for Santa Claus and Bigfoot and things of that nature that that most of us live our everyday life knowing aren't real, even though we can never prove that they aren't.
I mean, I think maybe yes, maybe no. Mm-hmm. Santa Claus, I don't think there's an actual... I think you can prove that he's not real. As far as location of his house or whatever it is, I never was able to believe in Santa Claus as a kid, okay? German despair story for a later time.
Sure. Well, but and I guess, tell me when I'm pushing too much on this.
I mean, I don't feel the conversation
offended. Not fun.
Oh. I mean, I think what the thing that we're not talking about is belief. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you believe based on whatever it is that is put in front of you that your way of thinking is accurate, just like other people do. So, like, I could believe until I'm blue in the face that, like, this couch is yellow. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter.
And you're right. No.
If my, like, I don't know, just the way people see things.
Right.
And I think that I have also had experiences to where it can't just be from myself, and this is just recent, not even in like church, whatever, just like in my own meditative practice, just the things that are happening, and the connection that I'm feeling to other greater, not me. And that's something that I can never prove to you.
Right.
But that's the way that I feel and I believe it. I'm choosing belief there, know, and I think that is the key factor, not that I don't feel better than you because this is how I am. Just like, I know you don't feel better than me because you don't believe that there are ghosts or whatever, something else.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's just a difference of belief. I just also am like, for me, science is great in a lot of ways. And then science, when it comes to, this is something that has always stuck with me. Dating rocks, for example, you can tell by the lines of whatever on, the rings on the tree trunks or whatever, but it's just yes and no. I think it gets kind of hard based on math. Yes. But then sometimes not, it's kind of like when someone's given a cancer diagnosis, okay, this is terminal within 2 to 6 months. But when you put that into eons, like, I just think there's just a great margin of error with a lot of things where I don't know. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
Kind of. And I would say back to that I completely agree. And I think that that's one of the things I kind of love about science. Also, and we've made similar disclaimers before, but I am no scientist. I am a person who has a fascination with science and loves particular science, not educators, but science communicators. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a hero of mine. Carl Sagan is a hero of mine. But one of the things I love about science is that it is continually moving. It is continually gaining new things, gaining new understandings. I love the fact that, we have the laws of motion, that we stopped using the terminology of law and started using the terminology of theory, so that moving forward, we gave room to not just be wrong, but more to gain a fuller understanding of how things work. Like a lot of the laws of motion, none of them are wrong, but we have a fuller, better understanding now. So I would say 100% science certainly doesn't get it right all of the time. And there are a large margin of errors, but it has that kind of moving forward capacity to it. that we're gaining new information daily and understanding phenomenal things. And I will say this, to give to the other side, this is something I've come around to fairly recently. That religion in a lot of ways has the same thing, because as fundamental as you want to be about it, or it's not you, but people want to be about it, the books of, or at least the Abrahamic religions I'm talking about, specifically Christianity, the Bible contradicts itself. The Bible is not univocal. It is written by a bunch of different people with a bunch of different points of view that say different things. And so by its nature, it has to be grappled with in some way.
Oh, like reconciled?
It has to be reconciled. There's a spin has to be put on the Bible. There can't be an exact literal interpretation of the Bible. And so given that mechanism in it, and I don't think that mechanism is particularly important or wasn't particularly on purpose, but given that mechanism of it, we do have the ability in at least some ways to start moving our understanding of the Bible forward, based on our more modern moralities. I guess you have to interpret the Bible. It has to be interpreted. And so since it's being interpreted, there is more room to interpret it in better ways and in worse ways. I don't think it's nearly the kind of breadth that we get in science to move forward for better understanding, but I do admit that it is there. That religion has not a great mechanism of moving forward, but a mechanism for moving forward, which isn't something I would have said probably even a year ago.
I mean, I think people have tried. I've kind of checked out of all of that stuff, and I'm talking about Christianity specifically. At the end of the day, though, I do think that if a person is doing no harm and they're feeling peace and relief and, I don't know if you want to say refuge, but like solace in whatever it is, the belief system that they're in, then I don't see a problem. Are you oppressing other people? Are you shoving people down based on, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to get around it, but like the, LGBTQI, what do you call it?
I mean, I call it the queer community, or the alphabet mafia is one
Mafia. That's
I'm
a
fond
fun one. They're constantly at odds, but Christianity full on oppresses that group, and for what?
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing. Those are just some of the things where I can't reconcile. I could never reconcile those things, you know?
Well, and not for nothing. I think should be brought up that we are, the reason that we currently don't have Roe versus Wade is exactly Christianity. There's no other.
Right. And how is church and state separate there? Like, why, I'm not even going to say no offense, why are men making decisions for women like that? That's fucking bullshit. Like, I don't know at what point, a fetus becomes a baby, as far as like, well, I don't know what, I believe when, I don't know, when the soul gets in there, no matter who does have an abortion, I don't think it's easy, like that stuff stays with a person, I would, I know people who've had them, and it's not, they're not crying about it every day, 10 years later or whatever, but like, that's something that stays with you, because it's a decision and it's final, whichever way that goes.
Right.
And I think a person should be able to make that decision for themselves, and I think it should be done safely, because it's not like abortions aren't happening. I mean, we live in California, so abortions are happening here. Right. And good.
Well, I mean, abortions are happening. It's just to
right, but like you see, like my mom used to watch this movie called Cider House Rules, which this was back in a time where my parents were very conservative, which they are not now.
Okay.
But that is a movie about, performing illegal, like a doctor performing illegal abortions because women were literally dying in the alleys with hangers hanging out of their vaginas, trying to do it themselves. And that's not cool either.
No.
Well,
and I think there's, I'll even take it a step further because a counter argument can be made of, outlawing murder doesn't mean that murder doesn't happen, but it's the right thing to do. And I will say that absolutely the reason that we should have legal and easy access to abortion is because a human being getting to choose whether or not they grow another human being in their body, especially when we had a mechanism in place like Roe versus Wade that set up that 2 trimester limit. I think that's just the morally right thing to do. I don't know how you have a society, not only, America doesn't mention liberty. It's kind of our fucking thing. And if you don't have the liberty to not grow another human being in your body if you don't want to, then I would argue that it's a pretty shitty liberty.
Exactly. You could say the same thing, like that's not happening to suffrage, right? Like women are allowed to vote now.
Yeah.
It's probably been almost 100 years since we've considered human enough to vote.
I think
pretty close.
You might be right. I think it was in the 1920s.
It was. But it doesn't mean that you have to vote.
No.
And people forget that, people should probably vote. I don't know, but I'm not going to give you any shit if you don't, because it's none of my business.
Yeah.
If you live in the United States, it is your choice. It is your privilege, so long as you don't have the things on your record that make it so that you can't vote. I
would even kick off some of those things, if not most of them, honestly.
Yeah. And there's this whole other argument that nobody talks about that I want to talk about. In the special needs community, specifically with lower limited verbal abilities, people that can't explain themselves, ripe for the picking for rapists. Family members, other people that enjoy having sex with non-consensual minors or people who are not able to make decisions for themselves legally.
Monsters
can target that community. Why should that person have a baby? Because some fucker implanted her with something that she did not ask for, probably didn't want, and cannot speak up about. Why does that person have to have this child? That is absurd. If we're talking, and I'm not talking about eugenics or making that decision, but if a person is considered unable to make decisions for themselves and cannot articulate in any way with any type of device what is going on,
right?
Why should that person be forced to have a baby?
Right.
That is nuts. And people don't talk about that stuff. And that stuff happens. That's why people target, little toddlers, whatever, that can't say it yet. Or, it's basically along the same line. It's very exploitive, very awful. It's all awful. Okay. Right. I'm not condoning one or for the other. Don't
of course.
Rate people, whether they can tell someone else about it or not. But I mean, especially that community. You can't tell me that is okay.
No, I would not
that you, but no one can.
Yeah.
No one can do that. No one talks about that or thinks about them, and that fucking sucks.
It's not the same. But I saw a really great ad on TikTok about it was a girl with Down syndrome talking about hey, when I go to the bar, I'm over 21.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah. And one of the things she brings up, which I know makes a lot of people uncomfortable, is she's like, oh, also, I have sex when I want. And I know that's not what you're talking
not
about.
At all.
That
person
is able to consent.
Yes.
And I think consent is so important in everything, but especially when it comes to sexual things. And it is very, very rare that I defend the text of the Bible. And the text of the Bible, I believe, has a lot of atrocious stuff in it. But I don't think, as far as I know and far as I've seen, that it has that it's particularly anti-abortion in any viewable way. I mean, you'd have to talk to somebody again who is more of an expert in it.
I mean, not that I'm an expert, but not only have I read it many times, I went to a Christian college, and one of the things you have to do there, it's 4 things. You have to take 4 foundational classes that explain a lot of this stuff. Again, not an expert, but I do think I have more of an understanding of the Bible than an average Christian would, because I've had to spend time not just reading it on my own, but like in a structured setting.
Right.
With people who are maybe experts or at least went to Bible
school or something. You have studied it.
I have literally studied it, not just at home. I forget why I said that though. Oh, I'm not an expert, but I do think, I mean, I don't know. It's the murder thing, because you're right. There's 0 about actual abortion, but I don't know if abortion was even a thing, because culturally back then, it wouldn't have been talked about in the Bible, but I think children and family was so sacred, even like within like the religion as it was lived and whenever this was written, that would never even occur to anyone to write about or talk about. Spilling seed is bad enough. Don't waste that shit.
Right.
But yeah, New Testament wise, yeah, it must be like the murder thing and just taking that too far. But it's just like, okay, but then if life begins when cells combine, but that life cannot live outside that womb. Yeah. So then is it an actual life? You know, you can't murder people, because people that are murdered are walking around living and breathing and probably able to sustain themselves for the most part. Yeah. Unless they're a baby.
Yeah. I think this has gone off the rails a little bit.
I didn't even get to my Terminator stuff, which was good.
Oh, but can we please hear the Terminator stuff quickly?
Okay. So, within Christianity, there's something called the rapture. And that is an end of times thing where God snatches all his souls he already got up to heaven, and then all the bad stuff keeps happening on earth. And so when I was a teenager, not a teenager, I was a tween. So like 12, 13. All of a sudden, I got very, very focused on and terrified of the rapture and it happening. And I was left behind. And somehow that merged with August 29th, 1997 from Terminator. So anyway, those things are very... I don't know. I always had this like weird anxiety about, okay, well, everyone, I'm home alone. Somehow I know the rapture has happened, and now I'm just home alone forever. You know, like those are. It's just like this.
Everybody else in your family got raptured
except for me. Aww. This is the fear. And then so the same similar. I don't know why these two things are connected in this way, but I think because I watched Terminator at that age, and it was scary enough, you know, to be nervous about August of 1997.
In your defense, Terminator 2 is literally called Judgment Day.
True. Didn't think about it. You know what? I probably did not think about it back then too, but that could have been a subconscious tie-in. But like they were always just kind of like molded together, and it had this like low-grade, constant anxiety that either the rapture was happening imminently, or if it didn't, it would definitely be on August 29th, 1997.
And popped you in like 7th grade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if other people experienced things like that, but it was very, very real to me. And there are many reasons why now I can look back and say, oh, this is this, and this behavior. But it was very scary and very real. But anyway, I watched Terminator 2 yesterday because I love it. And I cried because at the end, you know, just watching him dissolve into the lava, which
Spoilers.
Is not what it was, but that's how I describe it.
It is, I never think about the fact. I guess it's liquid metal, maybe? No, that's more what the T-800 is. I don't know.
It's really hot, liquidy, lava-looking stuff.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he gives a thumbs up. I was like, oh my gosh. Because I had never caught this before either, but I don't love Sarah Connor. Okay. But she, in this weird monologue, I was just like, ugh. As a kid, I didn't notice these things, but now I'm just like, I probably wouldn't have gone this way, but whatever. It's a big epic movie. She was like, ugh. This Terminator basically is a father figure. It was the most sane choice in an insane world. And I'm like, it was just like, I hated everything about that. But then it clicked at the end when the kid was having such a hard time letting go of that dad figure, the Terminator.
Yes.
And so that clicked in last night. And I was crying about that.
Aww.
Well, during the movie as it was happening. And then it was over. I don't know. I like Terminator. I was too tired to tell that story, and there's more, and I just can't.
I will say this, though, and that is one of the things I am not fond of religion, Christianity in particular on this one. The concept of hell is terrifying.
Means of control.
I don't know how any child can be expected to grapple with that, especially when you believe it's real, which I certainly did growing up.
And, that can be approached many ways. In my household, do this or you're going to hell was not really in the conversation. Right. But, that could definitely be used as spiritual abuse. Your soul is forever in peril of being damned. It's like, well, what if you said, if I believe that in Jesus and take him into my heart, then that's not the thing. So what is it? Yeah. Which one is it?
And I know this is
Jesus going to leave?
I know this is going to be maybe the most neuro-D take on it, but I think a big part of it too, that just would drive me insane, is there's no divine feedback along the way. Like, at no point do you know if you're being good enough to get into heaven, or if you're going to hell. It was like, are we going?
But it's not by works.
I mean,
but it's told to you that it's fucking confusing.
Yeah, it is. And like I say, any kid having to grapple with that, and for me specifically, not knowing specific rules about where the bars were, even just down to murder. I didn't murder anyone growing up. I waited till I was at least 23.
Oh, well, that was good of you.
No,
got to the ripe old dumber age.
I've never murdered anybody.
Oh,
but murder, even down to murder, was like, well, I can't murder anybody. And it's like, well, I mean, what if I murdered somebody and then went for forgiveness and repented? And so, I'm just picking murder because it's such a big thing. But things also went down to the opposite end of oh, but I just looked at that person's butt. Is that going to get me? And also, I was that cool little quote you had about not being actions or.
Oh, not by works?
Yeah, not by works.
It's a Bible verse, not a quote. Yeah. Well, I quoted a Bible verse.
I didn't have that information at my. I just had.
But that didn't make it any easier, though. But
well, that's what I'm saying. I had rough ideas. I knew that you had to be good. I did not know exactly what that entailed. And then just because I talk about it on the podcast, maybe too much information, but I remember I was at a certain age in my teenage years.
Spilling your seed everywhere?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what the story revolves around. But I wouldn't do it.
I ruined the punchline.
Oh.
Sorry.
No. I wouldn't do it on Christmas because that was Jesus's birthday, right? I was like, that's like a sin. I'll go to hell for that. But I did not learn till later that Easter was in fact a way holier day than Christmas. Like, I saw someone say, oh, Easter, the holiest day of the year. It's like, what? You need to tell me that. I've been jerking off on Easter every year. Oh, I'm in big trouble.
My Easter jerk off.
It's Ronnie's special Cadbury eggs. I may have to cut that out.
I mean, or not.
Maybe not.
I'm not.
But like, I know we laugh about it now, but like,
that was a real.
There was a real like crisis of like, oh no, I thought I was avoiding that on the holiest day of the year, and then it was like, no, I had the wrong holiest day of the year, which is more like a Three's Company sketch when you say it out loud. But like the actual, the punishment for that in my mind was
eternal
damnation.
Yeah, and it all rode on that. Well, you're fucked.
Yeah.
I just prefer to stay curious and open-minded,
Mm-hmm.
And that's as much as I can do. And that extends to spirituality. I like what I'm doing now. I feel peaceful. I feel more of myself. I feel better set up for life. And I haven't felt this way before. And unfortunately, and I'm sorry, Earmuff's parents, but I just didn't receive that from religion specifically.
This may be a weird place to leave it off, but it is something I've talked about. My good friend Mark before, man who I love deeply. He's very religious. He's a PK, which
pastor's
kid. And I forgot what we were talking about one time because we joke about it back and forth, and I forget what it was. It was something awesome, but not something like awesome in the sense of awesome, like world-changingly awesome. But we were joking back and forth. Probably, we'll say it was like some new cheeseburger or something that came out of a fast food restaurant that was delicious or something, right?
Okay.
And Mark was like, "How could this exist and you can tell me that there's no God?" And I said, "How can this exist and you can tell me you still need one?" And I think that, as silly as that example is, I think that is a large part of it, of like the mindset of maybe the two opposing views of, how can you tell me there isn't? How can you tell me you still need one? Which is just a funny little story I've always loved.
Yeah, that is a funny little story. It was probably an In-N-Out burger.
No, actually, he hates In-N-Out burger.
They actually don't change either. They don't come out with new anything.
That's true.
Well, thanks for sticking it out. Religion is a really huge topic, and I'm sure that we can talk about any of these things in more detail later, and probably will in some way, whether it's a targeted episode or just,
Well, I was going to say, we still live in America and to a great extent the
States.
world. And, religion's just a part of that. It will come up again.
Yeah. And religion, Christianity is the thing in the United States. There are other religions that completely rule other countries. There are other religions in the world, period. These are just the ones that are in our day-to-day. So, all right. Well, if you liked what you heard, could you please rate and review, give us a 5-star, whatever, wherever you heard us. If you have any notes or you want to join the conversation in an email way, because that would be my way, you can email us at myinnermoxiepod@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at innermoxiepod. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can do so at Xanism, Z-N-N-I-S-M. I am a religion and a disease. Perfect for this episode.
I know, it's fantastic. I will say this. I do believe in you.
Great. Follow me.
Ooh. on Instagram. Yeah, I am on all the socials, but I'm most active on TikTok at Band Ronnie. And you can also go listen to my other podcast, the Band Media Podcast. And yeah.
And with that, we bid you adieu.
Adieu.
We do. Bye.
Well,
Bye. Stay fresh, cheese bags. No kidding. Bye.
Later.